Okay, settle yourself down in your chair, in a position where you feel you can be comfortable upright. That may involve you, as I am at the moment, sitting a little bit back, and in the way this chair is designed, it means I can tilt forwards, feel a little bit of support for my lower back, just to enable a sense of settling, of quietening, of mind and body, feeling your weight dropping down, maybe your breathing changing slightly, losing some of the tightness in your body. Qualities that we want to bring into the later postures and the movements, but it's helpful to establish them as simply and as straightforwardly as possible, so that you have an idea of what you're sort of aiming for, because intention is always going to be a key element here. We want to make these things a clear intention. So having got that sense of my body beginning to release tightness, if I now move forwards, I have a kind of benchmark, if you see what I mean. If in the course of the session my back starts to tighten up, I might sit back again to give it a little bit of support. So finding a comfortable position and rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm, noticing the vibration of the muscles in shoulder and arms as you do this. On the other side, gentle sort of almost a shaking of my fingers I can feel. And then going to the upper part of your chest. And then down lightly on your belly and out your legs. So we want our bodies to feel supported, and obviously your chair is an important part of that in the seated exercises. But see if you can feel a little bit of your weight in your feet, so just tilting forwards a little bit, so feeling that your legs and your feet are part of how you're supported. And feel that your back and spine support the front of your body, so trying to get away from the habit that we often have of, say, pulling your belly in, tightening across your chest. Letting your shoulders drop down, this feeling of release and a kind of unclenching of muscles, tendons and ligaments, particularly those around the joints of the body. And becoming aware of how you're still supported as you lose some of that tightness. And initially, just thinking about your skeleton. If you manage to get your shoulders to drop for a moment, notice how your rib cage still supports the sort of shape, if you like, of your upper body and so on. Just beginning to turn your head. Very gently, it's just a small movement, so somebody will gently massaging your neck. Just to release some of the tightness in an area that can hold a great deal of stiffness and tightness. Now, hands in front of your shoulders and pushing your elbows forwards and over and back. nice and gently feeling the rotation in your shoulders, but also aware of what's happening in your chest, your sides, your upper back. So obviously, a good thing to try and loosen your shoulders, to mobilize the joints in your body as we work through them. But just as significant in Tai Chi is the awareness that goes with that awareness of how the movement in your shoulders is linked to areas like your chest, going forwards. So we gradually begin to build up a cohesive picture of our whole body. And at the same time, the effort that we make to do that has the effect of beginning to gather our attention, to quieten our attention, to draw our thoughts into our body. Hands out to your sides, and another rotation, this time a little bit more subtle. The movement from your shoulders to your elbows to your wrists. And then raising your arms a little bit like you're winding up thread. But now a little bit, still shoulders, elbows, wrists, but involving your fingers a little bit. And then back the other way. Resting your hands. Easing your weight forwards. So tilting forwards, a little bit more of your weight goes into your legs feeling compressed, and then as they expand, pushes your feet down into the floor and pushes your shoulders back. And then we sink down into the hips, lower back, buttocks, and again we get that sense of a push forwards and the shoulders go forward. So we get this cycle of movement coming up into the shoulders and down into the hips and back down in to the ground. Just beginning to permeate the whole of your body. Like a wave coming up from your feet and then draining away again. Let that movement just settle into a nice steady pulse, steady rhythm that again resonates through the whole of your body. And it's a rhythm, a pulse, an energy that sits in the background and quietly governs all the other movements of your body, whether that be sort of like things like the joints moving again or breathing, circulation. So this sense of an underlying energy that really relies a great deal on that sense of contact with the ground and on not resisting gravity, but rather allowing gravity to become part of that cycle of movement. And one of the things that we're wanting to cultivate in these arts, and this is in line with ideas in Chinese medicine, is that we want that underlying energy to flow in a smooth and a harmonious way, and to gradually become a bit more resilient, a bit stronger. Now, something to think about, particularly for people a bit more experienced here, is also how we make the movement, the quality of the movement, and in particular how we start a movement. For one reason or another, we may find ourselves straining. So as you go to push up, for instance, you may stiffen up in your back or tighten in your neck. That's especially true, I think, if you've had some kind of condition or injury that's made movement difficult through the whole body or through one part of your body. There's also a cultural thing here. Sometimes we just get into the habit of sort of grunting a little bit when we start to move. One of the images we often use in Tai Chi, as some of you know, is that as though we're moving through water. If you're in, say, a swimming pool, standing at one end of the swimming pool or one side, and you're in the water and you decide to go to the other side, to swim to the other side, or even to walk to the other side, what you'll tend to do is to sort of like start off really smoothly, almost gliding through the water. You probably wouldn't stiffen up, tighten up, because you know that it's going to make the resistance of the water that much stronger. And just see in these moments when you initiate the movement, when your legs decompress, when they start to expand, the feet push down to the floor, just aware of that contact point between feet and ground, and just very, very gently let the movement build up, sink into your hips, and rather than sort of straining, which is a very common habit, as I've said, sinking into your hips and again building the movement slowly. So if we can start the movement in that way, as though we're in water, not just the resistance of the water, but how we respond to it, then there's a better chance that we maintain that quality as we go through the rest of the movement. And then turning the centre of your body and going forward. So this is a way of moving that encourages that harmonious circulation that I referred to a few moments ago. And one of the things that certainly I've discovered in the practice of these arts is that when I'm tight in my body, the actual connections between the body, between hips and shoulders and so on and so forth are affected. Turning a little bit. So if we're looking to get this sense of our whole body moving as one unit, body and mind moving as one unit, sometimes the tightness in, say, our backs or our shoulders, that's like a kind of barrier to that sense of being connected. So there's a strong intention to release tightness and to find ways of moving that encourage the release of that tightness. Now, going around in the circle, rolling your pelvis around. So it's good to consider these things in these opening movements because they're so simple. It becomes a bit more difficult with the more complex exercises. Partly because they're more complex, partly because when we bring our arms into the movement, it can be very distracting. They can absorb all our attention. And we need that attentive quality to make sure that we don't slip back into old habits of movement and posture. Going around in the other direction. Now, to get a sense of how we bring the arms into the movement, come to the upright position, bring your hands around, try and touch the side of your body with your elbows or the inside of your arm, and now just start to tilt forwards and backwards. You're not independently moving your arm. But you have an image, and the one that I like is that you're carrying or moving a tray of drinks. I like it because it's quite a dynamic image, but also one that requires a stillness on the part of your arms. If you just went like that, you'll spill the drinks. So you can just begin to feel how the movements that we were just making, the transfer of the weight from the feet to hips, working up through the body very smoothly, flow into your arms. There's an intention in your arms, maybe a sense of an internal movement, an internal dynamic. And this combination of a stillness and a movement is very characteristic and something we want to maintain all the way through. It's just quite difficult with some of the more involved movements. So then you imagine there's a table in front of you and you lean forwards and you extend your arms a little bit just to put the tray on the table and then to carry it back. So again, if there was a table there, you wouldn't sort of like jerk your hands forwards. You know what would happen. If you went to pick the tray up, you wouldn't just drag it along because you've got a tray full of drinks and they'd spill everywhere. It's just a little extension outwards. If you look at what I'm doing, if I just move my arms, this is how far the arms move. Not very far at all. But if I combine that with movement of my weight, I get much more movement. Lengthening and the contraction through your back as well. And then just let your hands rest. When you lose that feeling at any point, remember how we built it up. We started with posture, with an awareness of the feet, that contact between the ground and your feet, the movement of your weight, that awareness of connection through the body, a sense of movement, a sense of energy that flows into your arms. Now, going into the stepping, raise one heel up, step out, put your heel down, lower the ball of the foot, press in gently, plant the foot. A lot trickier, but can you bring that same quality you just felt in your arms, stillness and movement, into your stepping? And this time following up with the weight. It's more difficult, I suspect, because our legs are considerably heavier than our arms, so there's often a habit of sort of pulling yourself in, straining. It's just an extension and a contraction through your leg. And then coming back and changing to the other side. First of all, without the weight moving. And then with your weight forward. And just rest for a moment. Let those ideas and those feelings just settle in before we start the main body of movements. Just adjust my posture a little bit. It's better. We develop an intuitive sense of how the posture could feel. Just then, I knew it didn't feel quite right, but I was talking to the camera and talking to the group, of course. So, but still, there was this little kind of almost sort of like warning sign in the background. Something's not quite right. You need to pay a little bit of attention. We learn to listen to what is happening within our body on many different levels, from the very subtle sense of the energy flowing to the much more kind of, in a way, obvious sense of this is where the hands are and so on. So, going back to this little exercise for a few rounds, just to remind yourself of how that feels, remembering that way of making effort, so you're moving into water, flowing into the water, not straining, trying not to stiffen up. So let your hands drop down, go into the exercise, bird folds its wings, rotating your arms as you go forwards and backwards. When you feel parts of your body stiffen up, there are several things to consider. One is, can you just release, like loosen the grip in that area that allows that movement to flow through, that energy to permeate that area. It may be that your posture's gone out. So if, for instance, I feel that my back's tight, I think, oh, hold on, I'm going over here. I wasn't supposed to go over there. I was supposed to go here. I'm losing the alignment with the pull of gravity, and the support I get from my legs and feet, my hips. This time, leaving your hands facing backwards and letting your arms swing through. Maybe I'm putting the wrong kind of effort into moving. With this exercise, for instance, I go forwards, my arms are pulled behind, I settle into my feet, my arm swings through. I'm not trying to lift my arm. However, my hand does swing up because it's attached to my shoulders like a pendulum swing. I don't have to lift it, but I note that it happens. And I know what it can feel like when that happens. How does it feel in my back, my sides, the front of my body? What associated patterns of movement are there within the body? Which means if I want to move my arms a little bit more, rather than straining in my arms, maybe I can bring a sense of intention to those more subtle qualities. I might use some kind of image. Talked about moving through water, but sometimes we can think of moving like water, as though the water was just flowing through those areas and gradually releasing them. Sometimes described as though being very gently massaged, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of ways that we can approach to start to clear out some of these blocks and barriers to the movement. This time, coming back, leaving your arms in position so they get drawn over as though you're rolling a ball in towards your chest. Just remind yourself of that underlying pattern of movement, that underlying energy. Feet to shoulders, shoulders to fingers. A broad pattern of expansion from upwards from the ground and then contraction. And then turning your hand, palm in, drawing your elbows apart. Pigeon spreads its wings, putting that expansion across chest and ribs, and then it may be that as you go through these movements, and especially if you can get that underlying pattern, that underlying flow, that things like your breathing will naturally harmonize with that. If it doesn't, don't force it. Just notice it when it happens. It won't necessarily happen all the time either. Sometimes you might take an extra breath or a quicker breath. So rather than forcing your breathing to match the movement or the other way around, we sort of encourage it with that focus of attention on that underlying those underlying patterns, that underlying pulse and energy. One more time. So I'm leaving your hands in line with your hips, letting your elbows go out just a little bit, and then palms forwards, push forwards, pushing way. And again, I'm not trying to lift my arms. As I come forwards, my elbows are pushed forwards, and this time the angle of my elbow remains constant. I'm not straightening my elbow. So actually, it's just quite natural for my arms, my hands to curve upwards. Remembering that the flow and how we begin a movement, and combining this with the step in. So sit back, turn towards one leg, let that leg flow out and plant, and then follow it up with the angling forwards, coming back, bring that foot in, plant it down, turn in the other direction, same thing. Notice how your body adapts to the exercise, particularly in that center part of your body. Your weight moves a little bit, there's a little bit of a turn. Now, coming back, bring your hands in. This time your elbows come back in front of your hips. Roll your fingers into a hollow fist. Going forwards, and again, you let the elbows straighten a little bit. They don't completely straighten. So your hands now stay at the same height and they push out forwards. Again, don't strain, don't grip your fingers tight. And then opening your fingers, winding back. When you come back this time, hand palm down, turn, ease forward, lengthening through your back and spine, out through your arms, turning and coming back, polishing the tape. Remember that quiet feeling in your arms, don't just swing your arms around, using the movement of your weight, extension and contraction through your back and spine, turning in your center, combine to make the movement happen really before we even consider that very gentle fluid extensions for our arms and hands. Now, coming back center, turning your hands palm up. Trickier now because this is a vertical movement, but just let your hips sink into the chair, feel your weight pushing down through your feet, and then the expansion coming from those areas up through your back, filling up, expanding through your upper body, and then contracting. This is called rooting down. Rooting down, of course, referring to the attempts that we make to drop our centre of gravity low. And one of the interesting things here is that actually a very strong feature of this is that downward movement through hips and feet leading to the upward movement. So the root is important from a purely physical point of view, if you like to think of it like that, where the lower our centre of gravity, the more stable we are. It's also an essential part of the dynamic quality, that sense of the movement, the energy that's going to move through your upper body. And then rotating your arms out, wild goose. So if the image of the bird in flight offers any kind of quality, that too can begin to be integrated into the movement. It isn't necessarily the case that the imagery and the names are going to do that for you all the time. And parting the clouds, easing forwards just a little bit, letting your arms drop down in front of your knees, sit back, sinking into your hips, and then that expansion, downward movement through your feet and your hips, and upward rising wave-like movements through your body. Forwards again. Remembering we don't want to strain in our back or our shoulders to move our arms. We slide into it and we glide into the movement. So you're moving through water. Last time, staying back, letting your arms drop down, and feeling the weight of your arms on your shoulders, and then focusing on one side, expanding, pushing your arm up to dragon plucks the stars from the sky, contracting down, so you feel the weight of your arm hanging, the weight of your body sinking down through your hips, and then change to the other side. Your arm drop right down, and then bring your hands in again, and once again, see if you can just gently touch the side of the centre of your body with the inside of your elbow or whatever's comfortable. And then again, that rising, expanding movement. This time, guide your hands to ride that energy upwards. Taking a moment just to return and then outwards. Pushing in two directions, body moving with this nice steady pulsing expansion and contraction. And this time, having brought your hands back, in a sense, sort of relocated the centre of your body, as you push out, you turn a little. Noticing how that redirects your arms. And then the other way. And then facing forwards and pushing out. So now we have pushing in four directions. And recognizing the significance of the center part of your body in guiding your hand in those directions, guiding the whole of your body in those directions. This time, pushing your hands out, extend one foot, so it's just the heel on the floor, slight bend in your knee, turn your hands palm up, ease forward, leaving your weight settling back into your hips, and then drawing yourself up very gently. Quite a strong movement, so go carefully and try and really have in mind that quality of movement. So here, don't stiffen in your shoulders or your back. Let your hips drop back. Feel how that begins to draw you back. Feel the expansion up through the front of your body. This is scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Finding ways to not stray, to not struggle. Grasping the tiger's ears, rolling your fingers again into a hollow fist, ease forwards, your back lengthening forwards and upwards now, drawing your arms over. Smooth feeling in the shoulders, and of course we have those connections to chest, sides, upper back, and ultimately the connection down into the ground through our feet, our legs, our hips, so that rise and expanding movement once again, underlying the whole dynamic. Changing sides, scooping the sea, looking at the sky. You may find to really cultivate these qualities, you want to think about your posture, you want to think about the range of the movement. So you should always feel that you could have gone a little bit further. If I go right down to here, it's now that much harder to keep that softness as I come back. I might want to go a little bit further. Can I just go to here? Maybe just release a little bit. So there is an intention here to gradually cultivate a larger range of movement, but not by pushing hard. And then grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. Now, preparing to stand. So once again, this tapping exercise wake us up a little bit. It's starting again on your face. Over your head and neck. Onto one shoulder and your arm. On the other side. Upper part of your chest. Belly. And importantly, before you go to use them, to stand on your legs. Okay, and then pushing your heels up. And circling around. And back the other way. Okay. So, come into standing. Having your feet directly below your hips, and stance that we're looking to build is to have your weight a little bit forwards, and then again releasing lower back, hips and buttocks just to allow gravity to pull down and to level off your pelvis. And then the hips drop back a little bit more. Again, the legs feeling very compressed, and then they expand. Feet are pushed down into the ground, hips are pushed up. Again, your centre of gravity dropping, hopefully staying down. And again, aware of that linkage, that movement between your feet and your hips gradually builds into your back and up, out into the upper part of your body. Expanding. Contracting. Bring your hands around, and again just let your arms or your elbows rest lightly against the side of your body. And again, you could imagine a heavy box or a tray of drinks or whatever image works for you, some kind of awareness, some kind of intention in your arms and your hands. Make you aware of that flow of energy. If you imagine, for instance, doing this in water, come a bit closer. As you push up, you'll feel the pressure of the water against the palms of your hands, the inside of your arm. As you went down, you'll feel it against the back. So different ideas, different images we can use to help us to generate this awareness of this very subtle energy flowing through the body. And then turning your hands so they're cradling the ball, and as you push up, without losing that quieter quality in the arms. The exercise, standing version of rooting down. At the bottom of the movement, rotate your hands out, your arms being pushed away from your body, the wild goose, and then parting the clouds. Curl your hands under and again rooting down. Just using this sequence of movements to help to build that awareness of subtle changes in your upper body, patterns of movement in that underlying energy, as well as in your shoulders and your ribs and so on and so forth. So this isn't to exclude the bigger movements, it's rather to generate what we might think of a holistic view, an intention to move. One more round. Good. Now, 1 foot forwards, keeping the width of your step at about the same in length. Very aware of those 2 areas of contact with the ground, between the soles of your feet and the ground. And moving from them and feeling the movement through your legs, through your hips, through your back and so on. So again, that sense of an energy arising and then draining away and then arising and draining away. This is by no means the only sort of aspect of energy within the body that we find, but it's one of the key ones that we work with in Tai Chi. Going forwards, push your back knee in so more of your weight settles above and into the front leg, and then when you go back you raise your toes, gradually finding this support and alignment more over one leg. Again, remember that image of moving through water. And then this time, without straining, bringing the foot in and pushing out. Obviously a lot more difficult when you're standing. But try not to sort of stiffen and grip. And one way of avoiding that is just, I'm quite close to the wall here, so I've got my hand on the wall. And that just gives me a little bit of extra support, so I can take a little bit more care as I take the step. Then with your other foot forwards, same thing. First of all, what we would call in Tai Chi fixed step. Beginning to raise your toes and your heel. Trying to maintain that focus of attention all the way through your body. much of what we do in Tai Chi challenges our pre-existing habits of holding ourselves and moving ourselves and stepping in. And when we lose attention, we slip back into those habits. Really, one way of looking at this is that we're trying to develop different habits. Now, just stepping through, forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the space. And you can imagine moving through water, being very careful about where you place your foot, but also not stiffening, not straining. And then changing direction. So this is the quality of movement that we look for all the way through. And it's strongly related to this process of releasing, of letting go, opening up areas of tightness in the body. One of the really important understandings of this Chinese term sung. Now, have your right foot forwards and the standing version of fisherman cast net. Remember, you're not trying to lift the arms, you're not straining to push your arms away from the body. If you want more movement in your arms, once again, recognize where you feel the movement, where are those areas in your upper body of expansion and contraction. Do you still have that connection to the ground as well? These are the things to cultivate intentionally to get more movement up through your body and into your arms. These subtle changes within the body are probably far more likely to respond to intention, to imagery. You might want to recall that feeling of carrying the tray of drinks, for instance, moving through water. The next time you come into your front leg, the right leg, turn to your left and let that again, as we discovered earlier, redirect the arms. Coming back, let your hands drop down. As you feel that expansion through your body, pushing your arms away, turning to your right. This is the movement, wind blows the willows. Expanding upwards through your belly, solar plexus, sides of your body, like a wave. Pushing your arms away from your body. Don't lift your shoulders up. So keep that feeling of your weight, your center of gravity dropping through the ground. And that feeling of connection, again, from the sole of your foot to the tips of your fingers. Remember, if I try and stand, say, on this leg, I've just got my toes on the ground, shoulders dropping down, not tight in my upper body, I'm fine. But if I do this, I'm stiffening up, I can feel myself being pulled backwards. Yeah, I mean, all sorts of things. I do that again. Oh, this time I'm going forwards. So it's unpredictable. It kind of lifts your centre of gravity. Imagine what it would be like if I gave you a heavy box and you were holding it down here. I could hold this, it's fine. But if you held it above your head, you'd be wobbling all over the place. Have your other foot forward. So this connection to the ground has a very real physical aspect to it, a really important physical aspect of stability. So fisherman cast a net. So what we don't want to do is to start to strain, to tighten, in the upper part of our body. in order to move the arms. And so we come back to that sense of internal movement, internal energy, as the sort of background driving dynamic that flows into the upper part of the body. We have these patterns of expansion and contraction we become increasingly aware of. Turning into wind blows the willows. Make sure you don't twist up in your back. And we can combine this movement with stepping, the exercise. Dragonfly skims the water. Again, go forwards or backwards depending on where you have room. Just bring the empty foot in, step through and plant. Same thing. Notice how the turning in the center aids the movement in your leg. And then if it feels appropriate and comfortable, raising your leg. But remember, you don't want to stiffen around your hips, lower back or legs to raise up, so that quality of movement, that flow, still felt in your legs. And then changing direction. One more time. And then bringing the feet back. Okay, so go back to your chairs. These ideas, they're not complicated. You know, we kind of can understand how if I let my hips sink, then the legs will sort of load and then go up. If you wanted to jump somewhere, you know, if you watch a cat when it's about to jump up on a wall, or you know, maybe you don't jump on many walls, but you know, kids do it, don't they? It's natural to sort of do this sort of thing, to use the body in this way. But so often when we're doing movements like Tai Chi, or when we're around the home and so on and so forth, we lose that awareness of the whole body moving just in our everyday activities, which means that we're straining more just to move around, to make a cup of tea, to do the washing up, to walk from one room to another. So we begin to notice these things in Tai Chi, and the response is always the same, bringing our attention and our intention into our body, downwards into the lower part of the body, and that link between the body and the ground, and through that, this awareness of a movement arising. As I said, there are other aspects to that in internal energy. Breathing is a good example. We get energy from the food that we eat, but this is that underlying dynamic. I sometimes describe it as like if you would go to see an orchestra play, you might not be aware of it, but there will be parts of the orchestra who are maintaining some kind of, not necessarily even a rhythm, but a pulse, shall we call it. And if they suddenly stopped, you'd notice it. So this underlying dynamic governs really all the other movements, or potentially governs all the other movements. And when we can get it into a softer, more fluid quality, then we encourage that governance, and we encourage the change in movement all the way through the body. So the final exercise, embracing tiger, return to the mat, and let your arms drop. Again, that gentle push up, that expansion, but very much with this exercise, bringing your arms around as though you're holding the ball, drawing in. The emphasis on that sinking down, on that connection downwards, which is so easily lost. And I mentioned a couple of aspects of this, the physical routine and that significance of that internal process, that internal dynamic, but also because we're doing this intentionally, we're following the movement in our mind, there's this grounding, this quietening of our minds as well. Not a sleepiness, not a cutting off, not a kind of journey elsewhere, but a real sense of embodied presence that is itself quite healing. It has this potential for quietness and space. One more time. And then let your hands come to rest. Okay, as always, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining in and watching. And please, as always, lovely to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. So, bye for now.